So we'll cover the critical hoists. We have talked a great deal about these already. Critical hoists are and always will be the most focused point of every single rigging debate and discussion because of their importance to us at our trade. The truth is, half the time we don't even notice what is a critical hoist happening or realize that that is actually a critical hoist because of the amount of paperwork that has to be accomplished to get there. Most critical hoists, well, all critical hoists, will have paperwork, a detailed written lift plan that has been reviewed by a certified professional. That certified professional has to then take liability upon himself to allow that lift to go forward. Most of the time, those roles and responsibilities have been set up. If you're involved in a critical lift, you're given a designated responsibility, and that's it. In my industry, we have had practically everything we pick up is considered at some point a critical pick because of cost, which is, of course, down there. Now, I have covered these various different conditions that meets a critical hoist criteria multiple times, and I'm going to do it one more time just for the impact of it. If we ever get to hoisting personnel and we have to lift them up, and in our industry that's not a unknown factor. I haven't seen it myself, but I'm sure there are places. If you do enough bridge work over troubled waters, then lo and behold, you may end up in a man basket. If we do that, we have to have a critical hoist plan. Also, the rigging has to be what?
10 to 1.
10 to 1 is the key that we're looking for, because at that point, the factor of safety rises dramatically. Now, if it is a heavy load is classified as 85% or more of the crane. As I've stated, certain sites have differences in how they do their heavy loads and how they move their objects, but 85 is usually when that triggers. And the reason for that is, if we are using 85% of the capacity of that crane, the crane is gonna work harder, the crane is gonna sound different. Parts and pieces in that crane that possibly wouldn't have been noticed before or overlooked in the past will suddenly come into play. You never know how bad a crane is until you put about 100% capacity on it, which, again, we do on a regular basis because we have to, like we have no option in the matter. The equipment we lift, just it. Now, personnel are working near power lines. I am sure in your industries you've had to deal with power lines a great deal. That's one of the things I don't have to mess with because most of my job sites don't have power to begin with because I'm installing equipment that would take that power. Therefore, they don't have active power lines beyond some, standard 120. I'm in good shape. You all, doing that you do bridges, you mess with a variety of infrastructure projects that involve outside work. What is the minimum distance we need to keep our cranes away from power lines?
20.
20 feet, yes. We have to stay that distance. Now, does it rise with the kilovoltage of the line? If it's a higher voltage line, do we have to stay a greater distance away?
Yes.
Absolutely. And there is a calculation to be considered, but the minimum distance is 20 feet. Now, are there other conditions that we should be aware of if we have to operate within that 20-foot buffer zone due to weather or otherwise that we have to consider with power lines?
Yeah.
Can weather have an impact?
Yes. It can sway your lines or good
Winds, one. What's another?
rain.
Rain. Oh, God, yes. But even more than that, mist, snow. You guys have snow. I don't have that shit. Ice. These are all factors, right? Because water is a what? It conducts electricity. Like, that is the key we're going for. So if you have heavy mist or perspiration in the air, heavy humidity, electricity can arc at a greater length. Therefore, that 20-foot buffer zone, due to humidity levels, may become further. Anytime we are working with 2 or more cranes, oh, one more thing, all power lines have to be considered energized unless they have been flagged de-energized, and good luck getting that done. Most power companies go out of their way not to flag things or de-energize because it means that they have to reroute power in other ways. Power companies will flag and insulate lines at times to make your job easier, but it's under conditions where it cannot be avoided. If we have 2 or more cranes attached to the load, we have to have a critical hoist plan in place. There's one signal person only assigned to that particular pick, and we obviously cannot get involved with moving objects without clear lines of communication. It is usually bulky load, requires special rigging hardware or unusual hitch configuration. Any load can trigger critical lift if the rigging configuration or the nature of it makes it so. My example that I constantly use from my field is one of our generators has vertical hydrogen coolers, and those vertical coolers are shoved in on a horizontal. I know. Did I say vertical hydrogen coolers? I did. They're horizontal hydrogen coolers in the side of the machine. Because of that, when we have to drag them out, we're doing it on wax and with an air tugger, and once it reaches a certain point, we have to attach an attachment device that lifts them to not crush the cooling rod tubes. I don't know if you dealt with coolant systems, I'm sure it's the same in a car. What you're doing is you're taking water and you're running it through the lines and you're transferring the cool water's energy into the hydrogen and vice versa. And that's all they're doing. Now, that is, I think there's a couple more conditions on the next slide. Additional criteria for determining our load is close to installation tolerances, and that's true. Anytime we have small tolerances to work with, we have to take our time. A wind standard inspection, operating maintenance, or test procedure cannot be followed as a result of radiation, contamination, toxic or hazardous chemicals or gases, or temperature extremes. So I am not sure if you guys have worked in many conditions like this. Unfortunately, my career pulls me into far too many conditions like that. We do deal with radiation in a few of our plants, and that does prevent us from doing the routine maintenance we would like. When there's a risk of damage to load or equipment in the hoisting area, or special precautions are required around sensitive or potentially dangerous equipment. Occasionally, when we're lifting loads, we have to go over power, transmission systems, and in those cases, it also triggers a critical lift. Now, your site can designate a critical lift anything pretty much if they feel like it meets certain criteria that could result in serious economic consequence. Our facilities maintain that if there is that level of serious economic harm, they're gonna make it critical, or if it's gonna delay their schedule too much. I think I've covered, obviously, if it's gonna release radioactivity, we don't wanna fuck with that. Critical lifts are the most important thing that we have to keep track of. They're the bread and butter of my particular career and world. But again, you guys have your own situations. The issue is that we have to be aware, we have to be briefed. We don't go near a load where we are not involved in that particular lift and stop.
I do have a question.